Test, test.
Good evening and welcome to the special, well, it's not really special, it's committee of the whole meeting for the town of Qualicum Beach. And I want to acknowledge that we are in traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, in particular the Qualicum First Nation. And we have before us the agenda. And I'd like to make a small change to the agenda that after we deal with the town of Qualicum Beach Tree Protection Bylaw, we have a special council meeting to deal with the notices. There's two notices of motions, one from Councillor Skipsey and one from Councillor Vander. So we'll deal with them. It's a timing issue, so I'll ask all of council to waive notice, and if that's agreeable, then we can have a special council meeting to deal with these two notices of motions. So to start with, I want to welcome the team from the Nanaimo for Water Smart, Mary Waters, who is the Chief Water Manager in the regional district. Mary, would you come forward and introduce your team? Thank you.
That's right. Okay. Green is go. Yeah. I like that. Yeah, my name is Murray Walters. I'm the Manager of Water Services at the Regional District of Nanaimo, and we're very happy that you invited us to come and put a booth up outside your council chambers so we could pass on the word about Team Water Smart and water conservation to people who pass by. That was great. And Melissa Tomlinson, sitting here, is our coordinator of outreach for the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program that the Regional District operates. And she's got a presentation that lasts about 20 minutes to talk about the DWWP program in general and water conservation and that kind of thing, specifically to do with the Team Water Smart program. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mary. And Melissa, we'll go to your presentation and ask questions afterwards.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for having us here today.
So we're from the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program in the Regional District of Nanaimo. And I'm going to start off by just giving you a little bit overview of what our program does. Oh, sorry, I went to the wrong part. Are you able to go back to the beginning? Sorry, so yeah, the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program is funded by parcel tax. It covers all, okay, let's see. Thank you. And it covers all of the regional district electoral areas, but all of the municipalities within, including the town of Qualicum Beach. It was launched in 2009 to address the need for better water information to inform local decisions and the need to coordinate across jurisdictions. So the vision of our program is for healthy, safe, and resilient water resources in the region, and that's enabled through strong partnerships. So our mission is to provide regional leadership at the watershed scale to support water management, land use planning, and community outreach, and advance drinking water sustainability, climate adaptation, and healthy ecosystems. And how we do that is under 3 main themes. So we have water information and science, water awareness and stewardship, and water-centric planning and policy support. And again, all of it is done through partnerships and collaboration. So for the information and science side of things, we have watershed monitoring that expands on the provincial database, and so long-term monitoring so that we can understand watershed trends. So our community watershed monitoring network is a partnership with streamkeeper groups across the region. If you can see on the map in the corner there, those are all of our monitoring sites. So it goes all across the region. We have many sites on all different creeks, streams, and rivers, and they collect water quality data at different times of the year. We also have the Volunteer Observation Well Network, which expands on the provincial observation well database, and that collects both water quality and water quantity data from aquifers or groundwater across the region. And in the information and science side of things, we also have hydrometric and climate monitoring, wetland mapping, and more. And all of these programs are volunteer-based, so if it's something that's of interest to you, you can learn more on our website at dwwp.ca. And so through the awareness and stewardship side of things, so this is where Team Water Smart comes in. So that's our education and outreach side of our program. And that is to raise watershed health awareness in local communities. And so we do community events where you'll see our booth like you saw in the lobby here. We do different workshops, for example, Well Smart workshops. We do watershed field trips for grade 4 and 5 students, home irrigation audits, and more. And then we also have initiatives to support community-led watershed stewardship projects. So we support different community groups and like the stream keepers and other stewardship groups through seed funding. So we provide funding for them to do different work around supporting stream health. And then we have our demonstration site and interpretive signage program, also to support community groups to develop different demonstration sites or interpretive signage so the public can learn more about these sites and their importance. And then the last theme in our program is the policy and planning support. So if you look at the graph on the right, those are all different. It's hard to read. I know it's a lot of information there, but basically what it's showing is that water has complex and overlapping jurisdictions. So there's many different organizations, levels of government, and different community groups and individuals that have a stake and share in water and land management. So it requires coordination to collectively improve the management of our region's water. And so what our program does, it helps inform existing water and land use governance. It advocates policies, plans, and practices that protect, restore, or maintain watershed function. So again, the partnerships and collaboration are key. So that's a bit of an overview of what the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program does. And now we'll go into, it says Water Smart Gardening, but really it is a whole bunch of information on outdoor water smart practices on your property. So not just in the garden, but your whole outside of your property. So I have an image here that shows different practices. For example, maintaining a healthy soil food web or using diverse seeds, so having diverse types of plants on your property, going pesticide-free, letting the lawn go golden in the summer, collecting water, for example, in a cistern or rain barrels, using native plants, adding compost and mulch. So this is the ideal water smart garden, and I'm just going to go a little bit more into depth on some of those things here. So for healthy soils and native plants, so practicing water smart gardening techniques increase water infiltration and retention, reduces stormwater runoff, so water is being held on the property instead of just going over top and running into the storm drains. It also provides habitat for native species and wildlife. So starting with the soil, we say soil is alive. So soil with high organic matter content can hold up to 90% of its weight in water. So you see the picture there of the really dark looking soil. That soil has a high organic matter. So that means it's had a lot of decaying matter, mulch that have gone into it, and a healthy community of organisms. So the healthy community of organisms living in the soil break down organic matter into nutrients that feed your plants, create structure and space where water is stored, and help to discourage pests and disease. So you want that nice, rich, dark-looking, healthy soil to maintain not only healthy plants, but to help retain water in the soil. So this is a little image of what's going on underneath in the soil. Those little microbes working away. They fix nitrogen, they grab nitrogen from the air, bring it into the soil, which feeds the plants. They make nutrients available to the plants. When they die, they release the vitamins and minerals back into the soil. They eat disease-causing microbes and nematodes that can damage plants. And they break down manures and organic matter to release nutrients. So there's a lot going on in the soil. So if you have nice, healthy soil, all this is going on underneath, and it's more water efficient. So native plants, when you came in, hopefully you saw that we have native plants from the Nault Native Plant Nursery we're giving away today. If you didn't get a chance to get one on your way in, we still have quite a few available, so please get one on your way out. Incorporating native plants in your garden helps to reduce water consumption while reducing maintenance, pruning, fertilizing, and disease problems. So by choosing native species, you are not only decreasing maintenance, but also providing habitat for native species, encouraging beneficial insects, and protecting our watershed from the spread of invasive species. So those are a few benefits of native plants, but also they're adapted to local soil and climate conditions, so they do not require excessive watering. Some of them, require a little bit of watering to get going, but then once they're established, they're usually okay. They don't require chemical fertilizers or pesticides. Many of the species thrive in poor soils, and they provide food and habitat for local bird, mammal, butterfly, and insect populations. It encourages biodiversity and creates local seed sources. And they are key to reducing or eliminating the need for supplemental irrigations. So they can be beautiful, functional, and water efficient. So have a look on your way out. We have plants and seeds available today if you're interested in taking some. And then on invasive species, so things you can do to prevent invasives. There is a Grow Me Instead handout. We don't have any with us today, but they're easy to find online at beplantwise.ca. It's a great guide that shows you some invasive species that you might find and a good alternative. So when looking for plants for your garden, try to find ones that are not invasive. Select the right plant for the right place. Be suspicious of fast spreaders. There's some reliable sources you can find online. Some wildflower seeds can have invasives mixed in with them, so have a look at those before just spreading them around. And when you're at the nursery or botanical gardens, encourage them to have only non-invasive plants, because you could still go into a nursery today and buy an invasive species of plant without knowing it. So yeah, just be careful about that. And so the next part about outdoor water smart is rain gardens. So what a rain garden is a vegetated depression used to collect and improve water quality by reducing runoff, storing and filtering it, and returning it to the soil. So you can see on the picture there, it's a depression in the ground, and plants are planted in there, and so when it rains, the water goes into that depression, and the roots from the plants help filter the water into the ground. So instead of the water just going across the surface and into the storm drains, it's staying in the property and maintaining that water on the property. It could also be connected to gutters and downspouts, depending how big it is. You might already have a depression in your property that you see water pooling in, and then you could just use that. Some people dig them as well and create that depression, depending on what you have on your property already. So typically rain gardens fill with a few inches of water after a storm, which slowly filters into the ground rather than running into a storm drain. And they also thrive with native plants, shrubs, and grasses. We're having a workshop next week on April 24th at the Nanaimo Place Community Center in the afternoon from 1 till 2:30 p.m. And Deb Jones, who's a rain garden expert, is coming across from Delta, BC, if you would like to learn more about rain gardens. We'll be having that next week. So xeriscaping aims to reduce or eliminate the need for watering. So xeriscaping is basically just a landscape that doesn't need any watering. So it could be a combination of succulent plants or grasses, rocks and stones, permeable pavers, and logs. So they can be beautiful and designed in many ways and can reduce watering needs by 50 to 75% once plants are established. And they're also very low maintenance. Once you have it set up, you don't need to work on it very often, and you're not going to be watering it. There's a great example at the Nanaimo Place Community Center as well. So if you're in that area, it's a good place to see an example of a xeriscape garden. So lawn alternatives. So I'll start off by saying that during our region's dry summers, over 40% of treated drinking water goes to quenching the thirst of decorative turf, so to watering lawns. And you can see on the graph on the bottom left corner there, these are all the RDN water service areas, but the blue bars are the amount of water that's used in the winter, and the red bars are the amount of water per household that's used in the summer. So you can see in most of the water service areas, during the summer, water use goes up a lot. And also, the average North American homeowner spends 150 hours per year on lawn care. So that includes cutting, weeding, aerating, and fertilizing. So could also save a lot of time by getting rid of the lawn. So what we say is go for the gold. So what does it mean to go golden? It just means letting your lawn go dormant over the summer months. So it's most effective with drought-tolerant grass species. And then during those peak periods where we're using more water and there's less rainfall, there's water left in the streams during those months. So it's better for the fish habitat because they like cooler water, more flow for when they're using the rivers. So the golden lawn, we call it the new normal because we've noticed community support in golden lawns has increased. Most people view the perfect lawns as an inconsiderate choice to local ecology. Dormant lawns are embraced as a natural occurrence rather than unsightly, and encouraging grasses to have natural cycles creates a healthy landscape. So on the right there is a picture of a lawn alternative called Woolly Thyme, and it stays green all year. It's nice to walk on, and it also smells really good. So there are options. And I think that's what's next is lawn alternatives. So some of the benefits of lawn alternatives, it provides a habitat. So we call grass a monoculture. It's just one species, the whole area. There's not a lot of animals or bugs or insects that like to live in grass, but if you have an alternative, it provides habitat for those different species. Through biodiversity, it also adds resiliency. They're nice and they're functional as well. So some of the common alternatives to lawn include the ground covers, like that woolly thyme that I pointed out. That's also in the picture here. Patios and paths, different types of meadows or edibles, the xeriscaping that we already talked about, native plants, and permeable pavers. So anything that still lets the water go through into the ground. I already mentioned that there's woolly thyme, there's creeping thyme. They both smell really nice too, so it's a nice alternative, and they're nice to walk on. Moss, if you have that right type of environment where moss likes to grow, also is really nice. Sedums and succulents, They don't require much watering. And then different types of clover are also really good lawn alternatives. They're nice to walk on and they're green as well. So those are some common ground covers. Another lawn alternative is the patios and paths. So they provide access around your property. They can look really nice. A combination of a few of these are all in the picture here. You can use gravel or permeable pavers so that water can still infiltrate down, and it decreases maintenance and there's no chemicals needed. So that's another option to include. And then naturescaping and meadows. So different wildflower meadows. Some of these flowers that are pictured here are some of the native plants and seeds that we are giving away. So meadows are the most efficient in increasing biodiversity, so having multiple types of plant species in one area. They attract beneficial pollinators, birds, and create habitat for wildlife. And they also look really nice. And you can also consider adding edibles into those meadows. So herbs, veggies, berries, and fruits can be utilized to achieve an ornamental effect that provides food value too. So raised planter boxes are good for planting these types of plants, and they can be creatively designed using rock and wood, or you can just integrate them into ornamental gardens. I think there's also a few examples of edible, just full edible forests around in the region. So if you wanted to have a look, I know there's a few in Nanaimo, and the Nault Native Plant Nursery has one too. That's all native plants that are edible. So if you're looking for inspiration, there is some around as well. So if you do have an area of lawn and you're considering getting rid of it, there's a few different options depending on what time of year it is and what you prefer. But if it's in the fall, there's smothering, so you can put newspaper or cardboard. It also says geotextiles and tarps, but newspaper and cardboard breaks down a bit easier. And then you apply mulch on top of that material. This is best done in the fall, and then you leave it all winter, and then in the following spring, take it off or mulch it up, and you should be ready to go. You can also cut your lawn. So if you're planning to do that in the fall, you can cut your lawn on the lowest setting and then bag the cuttings, and you could use that for your mulch to put on top. If you'd like to do it in the summer, there's also the alternative of cooking the lawn. So you can cover it with clear plastic in the warm weather for a minimum of 3 weeks up to 2 months. That'll also kill off the grass. And then for the edges, that you could spray them with alcohol, vinegar, and soap, or boiling water also works for the edges. So if the parts that you can't smother as well, those are other ways to get rid of the lawn. Because if you ever try digging up the lawn, that's a really not fun job at all. So yeah, this makes it a lot easier. So it sounds like a daunting task. This can make it a lot easier. Just put it down, and then you come back and the job's done. Another way to be water smart in your property, if you have an automatic irrigation system, is to have an efficient system. So proving the efficiency of your irrigation system will help you reduce your landscape's water consumption, while allowing you to deliver water only where you want it to go. So not only will you save on your water bill, but you're working to conserve and protect your community's water resources. So there's a couple ways you can do that. One is inspect your system. So this is a really good time of year to do this before it's turned on for the season. Look for leaks. If you catch a leak early, then you can, catch that leak early. And then, so you do this by turning on one zone at a time and looking for things that you see in the picture here. So the top middle picture is, we call a geyser. Basically, the sprinkler head's just broken and water's pouring out. Or if you see pooling, misting, so the rainbow, is basically just water going up into the air and being evaporated. So there's different types of more efficient emitters that you can use instead of those ones that are just letting water evaporate into the air. And look for things like that picture where it's the control box and there's water pooling in there as well. So, and then also check your irrigation controller and zone times as well. So sometimes that might be set incorrectly, and it might just be going on more than it actually needs to, and that could waste a lot of water that way as well. So if you do see that you have any of those, just replacing that technology with more efficient technology. So for example, you can replace your old controller with a smart controller, or adding a rain or weather sensor so that your system's only coming on when it needs to, not when it's raining. Switching to drip irrigation so that water's delivered just at the root of the plants, or switching to match precipitation rotators, which is the most efficient pop-up style of head. So if you did have a larger area, those are the most efficient type. And I'm going to talk about our rebates in just a minute, but we have a rebate program that offsets the cost to make any of those upgrades to more efficient technology. And then, yeah, rainwater harvesting. So we also recommend collecting water because, like we saw on that chart, that water is used a lot more in the summer, but that's also when there's less precipitation. So if we can collect water when we're having more precipitation, we can use it at those times where we have less. So rainwater harvesting is the collection and storage of rainwater directed off roofs and buildings to be used at a later time. So often more than just a rain barrel. A rain cistern or tank is larger and can be used above or below ground. It can be used outdoors for irrigating your garden, but as well as indoors if it's properly constructed with the appropriate treatment and plumbing. So we've seen examples of both across our region. And we do have rebates to support that as well. So I'll just give you a little bit of an overview about the rebates that we offer to support making some of these water smart upgrades if you're wanting to do that. Yeah, so the rainwater harvesting rebate is up to $1,000 off the purchase and installation of a rainwater harvesting system. So it's up to $700 for a cistern that is rated for potable use and able to collect a minimum of 1,000 imperial gallons. So that's about 4,500 liters. And then another $300 for eligible expenses, including transport, piping, debris traps, filters, and installation costs. This is our most popular rebate. So there is a pre-approval that's required. So if you're interested in doing this, you send in the pre-approval, and then you have 90 days to complete the work, and then you submit your claim. So all the information is available on our website, and we also have handouts about the rebate programs as well. The other one I wanted to mention is our irrigation upgrades and soil improvements rebate. So if you are considering upgrading your automatic irrigation system, by adding any of those things that I mentioned, the smart controller, a rain sensor, switching to drip irrigation. So for example, if you have those micro sprays and the water's just misting, you can switch to drip irrigation, and there's little shrubblers or bubblers that can deliver water directly to the base of the plants, or to the match precipitation rotators. And then there's also a rebate program. So if you're adding topsoil, compost, or organic mulch to your garden to help conserve water, so that one's 50% of costs, up to $100. If you're doing both at the same time, there's also a bonus, so incentive to do them both together. And same, this one also requires a pre-approval application. So for more information, you can get it through our handout or visiting our website. We also offer rebates for wellhead upgrades and well water testing. So I don't know if anybody here is on a well, but about 50% of RDN residents depend on groundwater, and it's all connected. So improperly constructed and poor maintained wells can act as a direct pathway for surface contaminants. So the wellhead upgrades rebate is between $50 and $650. And the goal of it is to reduce the risk to groundwater contamination by helping residents with the cost of upgrading their wells. So if you're considering upgrading your wellhead, or if you know somebody who is, please direct them to this so they can offset those costs a bit as well. And then we have a rebate for well water quality testing. So that's 50% off, up to $250. And with the same pre-approval process as well for that one. So I just want to finish off by giving a little bit of a vision for the future from the Drinking Water and Watershed Protection Program. So achieving water sustainability means having adequate, reliable water supply for the long-term health of our communities and ecosystems. Acting sustainably today is directly linked to the continued prosperity of our region for generations to come. So we can all do our part in our homes and gardens to aid, restore, and maintain healthy watershed function. So that's our vision for the future. And yeah, thank you so much for having us here today.
Well, thank you for the presentation. Any questions from Council? Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I really look forward to taking my mom out to buy some edibles and then have to clarify. But I was just curious, actually, one thing I don't know enough about with the RDN is the impact on farming. And I know Israel has done some amazing things with drip agriculture because there's not a lot of water, obviously, in Israel compared to here. And I was just wondering, because I know, the only thing I know is there was a report ages ago saying we have a lot of hay. Are we seeing a lot of water use through agricultural use, or is it something where it's not really having an impact? And it's not exactly the purpose of this thing, which is excellent. It's one of the questions that's always been running around my head for years, so I don't know if anyone, either of the two of you know that.
I can take a shot at that.
Okay,
Yeah,
sure,
Mr.
Randy.
Walters.
Go ahead.
I can only really speak in generalities, but we've been doing a bunch of work on water balances and things around the region. And one of the things we've looked at is the conversion of land from agricultural use to regular residential use. And that results in a significant reduction in water use when you do that. So just in general terms, you could probably sort of get from that agriculture uses a lot more water than people do. Yeah.
Any other questions from council? Ms. Councillor Young.
Melissa, I've had some local people say, where do we get rain barrels around here just to start simply saving some water?
Yeah, so different hardware stores often sell rain barrels. We get some sometimes to give away for prizes, and yeah, we'll get them from the local hardware stores. So yeah, that's a good place.
Thank you. Excuse me, I'm just wondering, do you have any kind of gray water programs or hopes for gray water programs, or
yeah.
is that in your planning and policy part of your work?
Yeah, we don't currently have any programs. I think we've been waiting for more like provincial legislation to come through, or.
And again, I can talk in generality about that because the grey water systems recently became a feature of the building code. So you can actually install a grey water system if you want and be coherent with the building code. But that's a fairly recent thing. Don't see a lot of uptake in it, honestly. And other than, sorry, acknowledging that in our I don't know what the name of that guide is, the rainwater collection manual that we have. Rainwater harvesting manual talks about the use of rainwater and grey water collection systems and things like that, but we haven't identified it as an initiative for the program yet.
Thank you.
Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just had a list of things. So the rain gardens. So we built a few before I was involved in local government. A little hat tip to the previous councils and our previous town engineer, Bob Weir. But the example you had, it looked a little bit more as like for home use. So if someone was looking to install them on their property, is there any sort of like advice you might give citizens on that?
Yeah, basically just to check your property already to see if you have any spots that would be suitable that maybe already are a depression in your property, so you don't have to do a lot of digging. But yeah, somewhere that's maybe near where you would like water to be going. So if you put it near a garden or somewhere like that, then it's dual purpose. But yeah, I'm also not a rain garden expert, and we're having Deb Jones come next week to do a workshop on that. So if you did want to know more, I have a few handouts on it and how to get started. But if you wanted to ask some more in-depth questions on that, she's the expert. So, yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
And just last thing, I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I know 100 Women Who Care raised a bunch of money for the News Bay Community Center. You mentioned a few times in the presentation. I think they're still looking for some more money for their roof. So if anyone in the community, they're a lovely organization, do a ton of great work, and they need to replace their roof right away. So if you have some extra money laying around, I know most of us probably don't, but if you do, please try to help them out.
Thank you. Anyone else for questions? Now the gallery. If anyone in the public would ask to come forward, please come to the microphone. And I know who you are, Angie, but just state your name and you live in Qualicum.
First of all, thank you. It was good. My name's Angie Price. I live in Qualicum Woods, and I'm generally pretty careful with water. And about 4 years ago, I got what I called the water bill from hell. And it was way out of line from my usual consumption. I have a pretty big yard, but I know what I use in a year. And it was awful. It was hundreds and hundreds of dollars over. So I called the town hall right away, of course, said, I think there's been a mistake. And the sweet lady said, I think there's been a leak. And so I went outside and I lifted the lid and all I could see was water. So I said, okay, well, why would the guy that took the reading, why would he not have said, hey, there's a leak? And they said, oh, we don't lift the lid. We just scan it and it takes a reading. So then, okay, fine. So the big issue was the leak on my property or the town's? And as it turned out, it was mine, lucky me. And it got resolved and I got a reduction, not a total reduction, but I got a generous one. So that's all good. But the issue was, when I looked up the date of the reading and the date that I received that notice, there was a 2-week interval. That means that water ran for 2 weeks. Drinking water gone for 2 weeks. And I can't be the only one that sort of thing has happened to. So my question is there a way to flag crazy readings? Like if someone has a history of a certain reading and then bingo, up pops this awful reading, is there a way to flag that so we can stop that? I mean, I would happily have had it fixed 2 weeks earlier if I'd known about it. I don't go around and look at the lid to see if there's water in there. I just wait for the bill like we all do. So yeah, that was my issue because it's a concern. We should be being careful with water, and I am, but that's nuts. So there you go, question for you.
Thank you. I will ask council if staff has a comment on that, so take a seat.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else from the gallery? Yes, Lois, come on up.
Hi, my name is Lois Eaton, and I live in Qualicum Woods, and I would also like to say thanks for that presentation. One of the things I wonder about is, as we get more development happening, why we don't have more regulations about rain harvesting, and from my point of view, solar. Why are we not saying at the get-go, you need to at least be plumbed for this? With climate change, that would to me make so much sense. So it also makes sense to me that the RDN would provide some leadership in this area, because I just think it's barreling down on us so fast, and everything we can do individually and you folks as leaders to make it all just become part of our everyday thinking makes sense to me. So thank you.
And I think that was part of the reason why we have this presentation before the summer, so that people are aware of some of the alternatives and also rainwater collecting. Yes, Jay.
Jay Smith, Qualicum Beach. First, I'd like to thank you for that excellent presentation. Nicely done. It's a lot of work. Just regard to Ms. Price's question about losses of water, I've had an older house and has older connections. And I've gotten to know almost everybody in town in the water department, having to come over and do various fixes. Now, when I lived in another city, I received a note from the city said, Mr. Smith, we notice you're using too much water. Could you go check a number of places in your house? And I did. And they identified the leak. We found the leak and we fixed it right away. Now that takes water, that costs money. And cities are towns are installing these. And so I wouldn't necessarily urge you to go holus bolus, but there's a way of, with new buildings coming on online, new apartments coming online, that we might start gradually implementing a metered system as normal practice. So the question that Ms. Price had is, could easily been fixed, I think, if there'd been a monitoring system. Could have been fixed with myself with a monitoring system. I think I'm running out of breaks with the town, but hopefully I've solved the problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the gallery for a comment or question? Yes, Lynn, come on up.
Thank you for a good presentation. Appreciate that. We heard a lot tonight about gardens, the exterior water use in homes. We have no grass anymore, so it's good to see that I've saved 150 hours of my year, and that's good to know.
Would you state the name for the record?
Do we have a good read on the...
Len, would you state your name for the record?
Oh, sorry, Len Flint, Qualicum Beach. My apologies. Do we have a good read, and perhaps Luke can help us here, I'm not sure, on the distribution of water use in home versus in the gardens and so on? And with respect to that, I suspect a lot of us, especially in the winter months, unless we go to Arizona, use a lot of water in the winter as well as the summer. Do we have any kind of programs that look closely at what we can do to save water in the homes? Thank you.
Thank you. I'll let Melissa respond, and then I'll refer to our staff as well. So Melissa, would you like to start, or Murray?
Again, I'll have to apologize for answering in generality, but I would say from the RDN's water purveyance perspective, we would estimate that the indoor water usage is less than half of the outdoor water usage as a rule. And I think we have some reasonable statistics to back that up, just looking at seasonal use and that kind of thing. The other thing that's important to note in general is that interior water use over the last, let's say, decade has been trending down very strongly and longer than that, because low water consumption toilets and low flow shower heads and things like that have been enshrined in building codes, and I think everybody would agree that generally water usage has gone down. Summer water usage not so much, but if you look at the average, particularly in the winter, you see a decline, and with the exception of the first year of COVID, I think that was probably the case for just about everybody. So technology is allowing indoor water usage to really drop consistently.
And I think water meters help as well. People realize how much it costs. Mr. Dickinson, would you like to respond to some of these questions? We had one about metering and whether we can be more or respond quicker if there's a leak, that kind of thing. And then the last question.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Regarding meters, we do install really good meters. The question really is, as one of these gentlemen had said, was that we can have them radio read. So that right now we read our meters twice a year. So 5 months in the summer and 7 months over the winter. And so with radio readers, then you would have basically a system that could check if the use goes up quickly, then there would be an alert sounded. I know Parksville had looked into this, and I can't remember the number. I'm not sure if my colleague recalls, but it was over $1 million for them to change out all their meters, so it's quite a bit of money. One of the other deterrents for us too is not to go to that besides money, is that we just don't have that many leaks. We don't have that many concerns per year to warrant it, as well as we have gone in the last couple of years to the point of the one person speaking, was that we do make a point whenever possible to lift the lid and look for that very reason. One, to make sure it's in good working order, even though we're being able to read it, but also see if we can see there's a leak or if somebody's filled it with materials or what have you. So we do make a point to that now. I was also going to say, just based on how much water we pump out of the ground, we pump out 7 times as much in the winter as we do on a summer day. So there's a huge increase in water use in the summer. So 7 times as much in the summer on a summer day as on an average winter day. How much is used inside and outside, that kind of gives you an indication. That's just across the municipality, but we generally do go from about per person using 200 liters per day, which is almost 2/3 of a bathtub, to about 1,000 liters a day per person in their household. So it is about a 5-fold increase. We're good sippers in the winter. I'll give credit to everyone, because we are below the Canadian average for our winter use. So we're great, but then it becomes summertime and we appear to need more water.
Thank you. Any other questions from the gallery? Yes, Pat, come on up.
Yes, thank you for your excellent presentation, Melinda. My question is, I guess, to the town and the
Just
RDN.
for the record, your name, Pat.
Oh, Pat Jacobson, Qualicum Beach. I guess my question is to the town and the RDN, are we making any progress in educating citizens about not paving over everything? You know, there's this little house up on Beach Road, I don't know if you've noticed it. its driveway has just two tracks for the car to go up, and everything else is there's vegetation allowing the water to infiltrate. And there's just too many examples of places. One of them, the Eagle Crest Golf Course, the parking lot used to be a hard pebble, I guess, surface, and it all got paved over, and that costs a lot of money. And it's not advancing our needs for water management. So could this be enshrined, or is there anything in building codes about not paving your whole yard over? Question?
I'll ask the question after. Go ahead. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I don't know if Mr. Dickinson or Mr. Seals has an answer to that question.
I'll get it started, and Mr. Dickinson would surely have something to add. So, stormwater management can be handled in the same manner as a utility. There are examples in Canada where the amount of pervious surfaces on a property does inform the amount that you pay for a stormwater utility as a separate charge. So that is an option should the town choose to pursue that in the future. The other thing I would add is that the amount of impervious surfaces and landscaping is a consideration in the design guidelines, which have had a lot of work recently, and council will be reviewing in the context of Bill 44. So in a council meeting in less than a month, you will have an option to see some design guidelines that do address some manner of stormwater management. So with that, if Rob has additional comments, I'd refer it to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, he's said it very well, so I'll just add a little bit at the end. And for new development on their properties, there will be that incentive to do less permeable or impermeable areas, because you're either going to have to deal with it on your own property or pay to upgrade the system downstream, because you can't just increase the flows and cause flooding to the users downstream type of thing. So that is something that we're going to have to be doing in the engineering department, looking at studies and the capacities of our systems and how we can help create guidelines to help these people as they're increasing either the density on their property or changing by paving, and what they can do with that stormwater. With rain gardens are great options, as well as storage and then release underground, and there's a lot of options, so we are looking at that.
Great, thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Yeah, just a couple of points. One is that if folks want to look at water in more detail for the town, we do publish an annual water report. It's available on our website, and you can look it up. To the point that was made, I think, by staff, you can actually see how water use has slowly declined, not significantly, but slowly declined in the last decade. So we were using more water when we were around 8,400 people than we are now, with about 1,000 more people. And talking to the town's previous engineer, apparently the peak water usage isn't on that chart. It was in the late 1980s. When we didn't charge more for extra water use, so people would just leave their sprinklers on all day and then go to work and come home, and it wasn't that great. And basically 3/4 of that water will just evaporate anyways, and it was really, really wasteful. So he did tell me that was like the highest amount of water provided to the town was literally in the late 1980s, and our population was half of what it is today. So we do want to think too, like when we're talking about environmental impacts, building forms do have a pretty big impact on the impacts on life cycle emissions, on water usage, and a host of other things. So just something to think about. And the question about the stormwater, I think that's a great conversation when we eventually get to looking at our DCCs. I think that would be a good thing to look at, where to the point that was made by our engineer and planner, that if there's more cost to the town downstream, then you have to pay more for your fees to build.
Very good. Anything else from the gallery or council? I want to thank our delegation. Mr. Waters, thank you for leading your team to Qualicum Beach and have the display outside and answer questions. My wife was very interested in all the plants that she thought would be water-wise, so thank you for those brochures. And now we'll take a brief recess, because the meeting about trees starts at 7. So we'll have a recess until 7 o'clock. Thank you. Good evening. We'll reconvene the meeting, and this time it will be about the tree protection bylaw, and I'll start off by open the floor to Mr. Sales.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. So the topic of this public input session is the tree protection bylaw. The town of Qualicum Beach enacted tree protection bylaw number 725 to manage the natural tree canopy and preserve native trees for future generations. The bylaw, which was adopted in 2023, impacts residents and property owners that want to remove a protected tree from their property. It introduces regulation to protect trees that meet certain criteria and provides a permit system to enable tree cutting and alteration under certain conditions. There's a lot of background information on the town's website with specific details as to what is a protected tree, the conditions in which you can remove.
Just a moment. The conversation in the hallway is kind of disturbing or interfering. Thanks, Rebecca. Please proceed.
Thank you. I was just saying that there is a page on the town's website that has lots of details as to what's permitted in terms of tree removal in the town with a permit and what's permitted in the town without a permit. And I'll just very briefly summarize this, and so we can open up to the public for some comments, but just at a very high level, not getting into tremendous detail. Protected trees are those trees that have a diameter at breast height, so kind of standing height of 12 inches or greater. That's a fairly substantial tree, 30 centimeters for those in metric. So those trees would generally all be protected. Smaller trees of certain species are protected as well, including arbutus, Gary oak, dogwood, Pacific yew, cascara, manzanita, seaside juniper, trembling aspen, and Oregon ash would also be protected, even if they're smaller sizes. There are some other categories of trees that are protected as well. So having kind of set that as a baseline, I'll just describe that property owners in the town on regular residential lots would be permitted to remove one tree every 2 years without any permission required. They can remove that tree. If you're going to remove more than one tree every 2 years, then it would require a permit. And there's also certain types of trees that would require a permit in any case. That's also detailed on the website. Owners of larger properties have slightly different rules that apply to them. So if you're on an agricultural property with agricultural zoning, the tree protection bylaw doesn't apply at all. If you're on a large property with residential zoning, so for example, the estate properties, which is large lot residential zoning, they're allowed to remove one tree per acre per year. So the tree bylaw was adopted by council with the intention of allowing property owners to manage the trees on their own property with some leeway and not be too strict. There are municipalities in BC where the tree protection bylaws are very strict, but at the same time, it does provide a degree of oversight and establishes a system where the town can manage the town's tree canopy moving forward. So there's a lot of detail in the bylaw. I won't describe it all here, but members of the public, I would encourage you to visit qualicumbeach.com/tree protection, which has all the details. But having said that, I will return it to you, Mr. Mayor, and we can return it to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Any question from council? All right. Anyone from the gallery? Now, this is what we call a check-in. The bylaw was adopted about a year ago, and we said we were going to do a check-in about a year from that time. And if it was necessary, based on the comments and the feedback that we received, we would review the tree bylaw. So this is just getting some feedback from people are saying and help us prepare for any amendments that council may consider. So who'd like to start off? Yes, Rachel, come on up. And if you come to the microphone, the button needs to be green. And then also if you just state your name and whether you live in Qualicum Beach.
Thank you. My name is Rachel Hamling, and I live and work in Qualicum Beach. Thank you for giving the public an opportunity to comment on the tree protection bylaw. I work as a land development consultant at Prism Land Surveying, And, excuse me, with this profession, I work with landowners wishing to develop their properties by means of rezoning and/or subdivision.
John, you cannot close the doors. This is an open meeting. I'm sorry. We cannot close the door. No. We'll just have to ask the people who are talking to talk quietly. Go ahead.
Thanks. So again, I work with landowners that wish to rezone or subdivide their properties. Well, I feel that there's many positive aspects to the bylaw. I'd like to provide council with a scenario in which the tree protection bylaw would greatly affect the affordability and feasibility of development. For example, we're currently working on a 6-lot subdivision that is zoned to allow for subdivision of residential lots. This property will follow all the requirements of the town's subdivision regulations. One of the lots will be fully preserved and will not require any tree removal. This development is currently at engineering approval stage for the 5 remaining lots. Before the tree protection bylaw was adopted, our conversations with the owners involved land clearing, but they really wanted to wait till they received subdivision approval with the goal to preserve as many trees as possible. In this case, the subdivision requirements include road dedication and the construction of the road, lot grading for public pathways, water lines, sanitary sewer upgrades, and stormwater detention areas. This property is heavily treed, and the construction of the works and services to grade 5 lots, approximately 110 trees would have to be removed. This tree total does not account for any driveways or building footprints on each parcel, which would be approximately another 100 trees. There are no exemptions in the tree bylaw or tree protection bylaw for the installation of roads, services, driveways, or building footprints. So it seems that the owners have 2 options. Number 1, pay the town of Qualicum Beach the sum of $1,000 per replacement tree. With every 1 tree cut, 2 replacement trees must be replaced. So with 110 trees that would need to be removed just to service the lots, the total amount the town would collect is $220,000 to satisfy the replacement costs. Their second option was to plant 2 trees for every 1 removed. So in this scenario, a total of 220 trees would need to be replaced. Again, this is just for the servicing of the lot. So a refundable security deposit of $700 per replacement tree is required before a tree cutting permit is issued. In this case, the cost of the security deposit would be $154,000. If the 220 trees are all in good health at the end of the 2 years of planting, then the owner can request the security refund. So please keep in mind these calculations do not include building footprints, driveways, or potential rock pits for stormwater on each property, which would likely total another 100 trees. So there are some challenges I see with the replanting. I'll just highlight 3 of them quickly. Number 1, if some of the 220 replacement trees do not survive to the end of the 2 years, then for every 1 dead or tree in poor health, 2 more trees would have to be replaced, and additional security deposits are collected by the town. With the replacement of 220 trees, it is likely that some won't survive, so this process can go on indefinitely. Number 2, if a landowner subdivides their property and sells the lot to different owners, and the original landowner has paid the security deposit, how do they ensure that the new property owners maintain the replacement trees? This may also pose legal challenges and additional costs between the original landowner, developer, and the property owners. And also, how would the interest that would accrue on the $154,000 security deposit over the 2-year maintenance period be handled by the town? And number 3, according to a local arborist, you cannot simply walk in and to a garden nursery and purchase 220 trees with a 2-meter in height minimum for deciduous trees and a 3-meter in height minimum for coniferous trees. The cost of irrigating and maintaining these trees during construction is also very challenging. So it's not surprising that the residents of Qualicum Beach clearly love the trees here and strive to protect them and the tree canopy. I love trees myself. It was interesting that in the 2019 report requested by the town that was prepared by Guy & Associates Consulting in Urban Forestry, they calculate that over a 10-year span from 2009 to 2018, that the overall tree canopy in Qualicum Beach has increased by 11%, and there was a 29 increase in urban areas specifically. So it looks like we're doing a really good job protecting the trees, but there's also a really great need for housing, especially in residentially zoned areas. As a comparison, with the current zoning bylaw, the development cost charges for the 6-lot subdivision would total just over $128,000. So if we calculate the approximate tree removal replacement costs that the town would collect for both the servicing and future residential construction, these costs would total approximately $420,000. This averages out to approximately $84,000 just in tree removal for each property. So this case study demonstrates that a significant financial burden this tree protection bylaw will place on homeowners or during development. And while this bylaw does include a right of reconsideration for an owner to have a decision reconsidered by council, I'd like to suggest having exemptions within the bylaw for tree removal related to road construction, public pathways, works and services, 1 driveway per lot, and a building footprint for residential use. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Steels, could you respond to how this worked?
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. So Ms. Hamling has accurately described the current security system and the current system for accepting contributions for the town to plant elsewhere on the site. So the types of recommendations that she's making, they are worth considering at the time that the town does a full review of the bylaw. So there could be exemptions. The current bylaw, it does allow for the trees to be removed if it's within the building footprint or required for access. However, it doesn't exempt them from paying security deposits or paying towards paying towards the replacement of trees elsewhere in the town. So I think the purpose, my understanding is today's session is mostly about hearing the issues. I don't really have a recommendation in terms of accepting recommendations or not at this time, but certainly the points were accurately made and worthy of consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. Anyone else like to speak? Go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. My name's Kevin Monahan. I live in the tree streets in Qualicum Beach. So I'm definitely in favor of the bylaw, though I recognize that the bylaw has some, there's room for improvement, let's put it that way. But no, I believe that very strongly this bylaw was something that needed to come along. On the other hand, it needs review, and I think the process that's been followed here to bring it in and then to review, and in the meantime, you're taking a light touch to the controls, I think has been appropriate. So I'd like to congratulate Council on that approach to things. When I look at this bylaw, I think what we have to do is we have to keep our eyes on the prize, and we always have to go back and say, what's the purpose of the bylaw? Why do we have a tree bylaw in the first place? And the purpose for having the tree bylaw, in my understanding, is to maintain or improve the tree canopy coverage in Qualicum Beach. That's the essential purpose behind all of this. And if we weren't intending to do that, then why would we be doing it at all? And so where there's discretion given in the bylaw for people to make decisions, et cetera, I think that should always be seen as the purpose of the bylaw, is to maintain that, that tree canopy coverage and ensure that we're not going backwards. I fear that under the new provincial rules that we might start going backwards in terms of tree coverage in Qualicum Beach. A second issue for me is, and which is very important, is in terms of fairness. And fairness not only to people, but fairness between people and the council. And I see, for instance, the bylaw applies to town-owned land, but you don't have to get a permit to cut a tree on town-owned land, and replacement trees are tied to the permit. So if you don't need a permit, you don't have to put in replacement trees. So the town can cut trees and not replace them, whereas people must replace trees. And this even extends to dead or dying trees, which are, the bylaw requires that you get a permit to cut dead or dying trees. And yet the town has been cutting dead and dying trees left, right, and center for good purposes in the community forest. Dead and dying trees are being brought down. But if somebody has to cut a dead or dying tree on their property, they have to go through the whole process, security deposits, payments, etc., and yet that doesn't apply to the town. And so I feel like there's a bit of a inconsistency there and an unfairness. I did provide you with my detailed comments on the bylaw, and I'm not going to try to go through all of it here tonight. But I do feel that there are fairness issues in the bylaw that do need to be addressed. And also that there are some issues where there's some lack of clarity. For instance, if you say to the town, please plant trees for me, instead of me planting trees on my own property, as the previous speaker said, they've got to pay $1,000 per tree, and they also have to provide a security deposit. But wait a minute, they've given up the ability to direct how that tree is maintained, because the town will be doing that for them. So how is it that that person is still responsible for providing a security deposit, because they have no influence at all anymore on whether that tree is looked after and how it's looked after? So again, there's an issue of fairness and appropriateness. We have a tree bylaw. It's in place, and I think it's really woken people up to issues. And I look forward to working with the town and seeing some of the kinks worked out of it. But anyway, thank you very much for letting me go on, and I'll sit down now.
Thank you. Anyone else from the gallery? Come on up, Scott.
Scott Rodway, 208 Thetis, Qualicum Beach. I'm here to throw a little bit of bad news. This is a bad bylaw, pure and simple. It's ill-conceived and misguided. It adversely impacts on the ability of homeowners and property owners to fire safe and fire smart their homes and properties. That is not dealt with in the bylaw. We all know that the bylaw and the keeping of these trees, whether it's 1,500, 5,000, or 10,000 trees in the town of Qualicum Beach, will have nothing, no impact whatsoever on climate change or anything to do with fires or climate change in the world. Why was the bylaw passed? If you go back and watch the meeting of March 22nd last year, it appears that it was a feel-good bylaw so that we could show that we were doing something and show the younger generation that something was being done about climate change. That's not a good enough reason. This is a waste of taxpayers' dollars in staffing costs. It is a waste of our neighbors' dollars in compliance costs. And it misses the point by negatively impacting on wildfire protection. We all know about the increased risk of wildfires, particularly after Kelowna and how far those sparks can go. We have community parks, we have the Brown property, we have trees up all outside Rupert. It's not going to take much, people. We have to have more of concern about fire protection in our homes. We're told that no trees are to be within 10 meters of our home. We're told that trees 10 to 30 meters from our home have to be spaced. And yet we now have a bylaw that says if we try to do any of that, we're going to have to pay enormous fees. And if we don't pay the fees, we're going to have to put up enormous amounts of money to have a bond and sit on it for 2 years. Our property, and we are probably an outlier, is a single-family residential lot. I counted. We have 20 trees on our property. For 30 years, we've loved those trees. But 5 of them, probably protected, are within 10 meters of the house now. One of them has branches that are actually over the neighbor's garage. If I have to deal with those, this is just going to cost me money. It really is a disincentive to protecting our properties. Again, why? So we can supposedly look good? So that it shows we're doing something? The canopy, we have to take into consideration, despite my friend's love of the canopy. We love the canopy. We wouldn't have had 20 trees for 30 years if we didn't like the green. But we have to really consider the impact of the bylaw. I think it's a bad bylaw. I think it needs to be gotten rid of. And the sooner the better, because summer's coming.
Thank you. Yes, Jay. And thank you for this. This is a work-safe place where we like to keep things respectful. So I know there are a diversion of opinions and some quite far apart. So I appreciate that there is no clapping or booing or anything like that. So thank you for working with the council to keep this place respectful. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. First, I'd like to start off by complimenting the town for putting in a bylaw. We weren't the leaders in this. As a matter of fact, we were laggers. Most municipalities in the province and on this island do have bylaws that are similar to us. They're not harsh. There haven't been the great complaints. They've been working as far as I know. So I don't think we should overdo it in terms of the sky is falling. It's not falling. But I think what we have to do is, go back and look. This is one other point I was trying to make. So the climate change aspect, I think, is very important. This is like a war. You can't say, well, we're just a small community. No people, no men from this town will go to war. Other places can go. We all have to do our part. Every community has to do its part. And trees do something for the community that's very important. Trees do cool. They have a great many health benefits. They protect water runoff. If we cut down all the trees, we'd have other problems that cities have of water running down, causing all types of problems. So trees are natural assets saving us money. And if you cut them down, you've got another problem. And it'll be the public paid for it, and others will not be paying for it, but the public, the taxpayers. But I have 3 issues about the bylaw. And that is the question of statistics and measurements. We're going to have to collect some statistics, some measurements, and you have to start out, what is the policy or the bylaw trying to do? What is its purpose and what is it trying to accomplish? And that's true of any policy. You want to go back and measure, was it successful? Well, how do you do it? You have to have data, you have to have measurements, and you have to have a response back to the public. If you don't do this, you have no idea what the effect of the bylaw is. It's just blank, it's just there, you've passed something, then it becomes symbolism only. And other people could do what they wanted because we're not collecting stats. So we have to have some information and reports back, and we have to have statistical measures. Now, the other issue I think is important is the fact that the town has exempted itself from the bylaw. Now, this is quite strange because I'm a member of the Friends of Qualicum Beach Forest, And we looked at a number of municipalities in the province, and they all were covered. Public lands and private lands were covered. If you go look in, it came out in 2018, a report by the Real Estate Board in Vancouver, a report on 18 municipalities and the bylaws. All municipalities were covered by the bylaws. And I think this comes to a very important point in terms of the legitimacy of any bylaw. When a town or a government exempts it themselves from the bylaw, it runs into a question by the public that somehow the policy is do as I say, but not as I do. And I think for most people, the town and all governments should live up to the spirit of the law. If you put in a law, you should live up to the spirit and do what the law is going to do. If you cut down a bunch of trees, you should replace them, and you should say that we are replacing them. So I think that is a deficiency. Very good point on dead and dying trees. And there are concerns about fire safe. If a tree is dying, I don't see why, and should be removed, why you should have to pay for a replacement tree. I mean, somebody could check and say this is dead or dying, it's a fire hazard, and we want to protect the town from fire hazards. So I think that could be finesse. The other comes to the final point, I think comes to a concern. You know, I've spent a lot of time looking at tree protection bylaws. It's not the most exciting thing to do, but they're very complex. They take a lot of work. They take a lot of expertise. And we have a town planner that's overloaded, as good as he is, I think in some ways needs help. And there should be a means of maybe a committee, a board, or some of their outside expertise to assist in going through and finding what are the exemplars. And you can go ask the fellow that was here, Mr. Guy, that was here in 2017 and Jeremy Jai in 2018. He has a model. You can just ask him. This city has a model tree protection bylaw. That one has a tree protection bylaw. So we should try and measure ourselves up to what is being done elsewhere. And finally, Jeremy Jai presented here years ago in terms of tree canopy. That was conducted in 2017. This is 2024. I could take anybody and walk around the town and point out all the lots that once had trees. I had lots next to me a lot next to me had 48 trees. That wasn't covered in Jeremy Jai's report. So that tree canopy data is just useless as far as I'm concerned. You have to have a new starting point, and we shouldn't be referring to that, and we shouldn't be using it to make any decisions. Thank you.
Thank you.
One point, Your Worship. Just one thing.
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Smith, could you just give his name to the microphone just for our staff to record his name? I'm sure they know who he is, but just.
Oh, yes. I've been asking everybody to say their name when you live in Qualicum Beach, and I missed you. So you got away with one. Thank you, Councillor Harrison. Yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, my name is John Chittick. I live in Qualicum Beach. About a year ago, my friends and I wrote a letter to council complaining about various aspects of this bylaw. We all happen to be old burnt-out forester types that worked in the woods all our careers, so we know a little bit about trees. So with all due respect, does this bylaw solve an existing problem? And before you think about that, I don't pretend to speak for other people's values. Everybody has their own opinions of what's important to them in their lives. Some people obviously care an awful lot about trees and the wild, and others not so much. Some people just would rather have a garden that grows veggies rather than having root encroachment and shade that disturb that. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing mystical about a tree.
Please address the chair.
Sorry. I'm talking to you guys, I guess. I used to be on council in Port McNeill, so I'm used to speaking to the public. Does this bylaw solve an existing? Are trees being significantly removed? If so, is not the policy of increasing density at odds with this bylaw, as you are encouraging replacing large lots, which have many trees, with many numerous small lots with little or no room for any trees? Given that we likely disagree that there is not a problem, is this bylaw not an imposition of costs on property owners of the whims or allegiances of council? What makes opinions of council more enlightening than your average taxpayer and voter? I don't recall any campaigning on this topic. Whose trees are these? Does the town own these trees, or do the people paying the increasing taxes that support the town own them? If the town owns them, then in addition to accepting all related liabilities, does the town plan to clean my roof and gutters 4 times a year? I doubt it. If the property owners own them, then why has the town imposed the very definition of fascism in the pursuit of Gaia knows what?
Sir, I don't think that's an appropriate term to use, fascism. This is not a fascist country. Thank you.
Have you read Mussolini? Do you know the definition of fascism?
I don't think we are a fascist state, so please withdraw that.
Okay, I'll withdraw it.
Thank you.
I noticed that the town bylaws include height restrictions on buildings, presumably to protect views. Does the town plan on doing the same for trees, or will the town eliminate building height restrictions, as apparently trees trump buildings? Does the town consider the rose-colored articles it has published to be adequate in informing the public about all these intrusions imposed on them? Have you polled the public? How does the town plan on enforcing the sacred root zones that shall not be disturbed? Root police? How does imposing costs on homeowners who choose to manage their property in a certain manner not increase the cost of home ownership that all of you campaigned against? Given that this bylaw canonizes large trees, I would like to remind council that large trees are the most dangerous to people and property, dirty in terms of the litter fall, and problematic in terms of root encroachment. There is no shortage of forest growing on Vancouver Island. It is not wise nor compatible to impose an old forest environment in residential properties within municipalities, and authoritarian when done through coercion such as this bylaw. People come to Qualicum Beach to enjoy the pleasant community, climate, properties with abundant trees. That was the situation before this bylaw was passed, and I doubt it would change without it. This bylaw is will very likely result in fewer trees in the future, as once people become aware of its burdens. I suspect fewer owners will allow their trees to exceed 12 inches DBH. Thank you.
Thank you. Who would like to speak next? Yes, sir. John, come on up.
Good evening, John Wood. I live in Eagle Crest, which is part of Qualicum Beach. I have some questions and comments, and they echo a lot of what some of the previous speakers have said. I agree that when this bylaw was brought to the council table in March of last year, it was done in what appeared to those of us who were not on council to be being done with undue haste. And we questioned, a lot of us at the time, why it was being rushed through, pushed through, whatever the terminology is you wanted to use. A couple of questions. Why should an arborist be required to determine if a tree is dead? Why should the homeowner have to hire an arborist to prove that a dead tree is a dead tree? That to me doesn't make any sense.
Okay, Mr. Wood, I think what we'll do is we'll take all the questions, and then once we've got them all, I'll ask staff to respond. So just ask all the questions, and then we can respond when you're done.
Okay. Another question, which was alluded to a couple of minutes ago, is how will the Bill 44 requirements, will the Bill 44 requirements supersede this tree bylaw? I don't know the answer to that, and it might be worth looking at. And I guess those are my only two questions, but I've got a couple of statements as well. Housing continues to become more and more unaffordable, and adding to this large expense to a homeowner's cost, should they need to remove any trees, adds to the multiple layers of expenses they must already incur. Municipalities should be doing their part to keep costs down for housing, not constantly finding ways to increase them. And that's what it appears to a lot of people to be. And the last one, I'll just read this because I want to make sure I get it right. Most people in Qualicum Beach love their trees, but for many individual reasons, some of which have been alluded to, and others might be things like fire hazard, needing more light, overhanging a home or a neighbor's garage, leaning dangerously, building a home or putting on an addition, roots hampering a septic system, wanting to put in a vegetable or flower garden, etc. The cost is already high to have the trees removed, and with the cost of the permit process, should you require an arborist report, the cost of replacement trees, and the high value for deposits to the town, which are held for 2 years, presumably with no interest back to the payor of the deposit, it all becomes an onerous expense, particularly if there's not room on their own property to replant the two trees required. And again, the comment was made earlier, the town will determine where the trees go, but won't guarantee that there's any standard of care for those trees. So you can just say, well, we'll just throw the deposit in the general revenue. And one of the things that might be advantageous is a large reduction in the value of the deposit. And thank you.
Thank you, John. Mr. Sales, the question regarding needing an arborist for a dead tree, do you have an answer at this point, or you need some research for that?
No, thank you, Mayor Westbrook. So the requirement in the bylaw is that a qualified tree risk assessor be the one that determine whether it is dead, diseased, or dying. And in that case, no permit fee is required, but a permit is required. So that is correct. In answer to the second question raised by Mr. Wood, Bill 44, which is the housing legislation that was adopted last year, it does require that municipalities permit more density on residential lots and does include site parameters as well in terms of minimum setbacks that are, in most cases, significantly less than what the town currently allows, which means that on a given parcel, a much larger percentage could be covered with a house. And that does mean that they would be able to apply for a permit and remove trees within that footprint or where the root zone interacts with the structure. So the point is very well taken that as you increase the amount of building on a parcel, more trees will be eligible for removal under this bylaw. So it doesn't change the replacement costs or the securities required for replanting, but if there's less room on the lot because there's more building, there wouldn't be much opportunity to replant on the site, and they would likely be making contributions towards planting elsewhere in the town. So I hope that answers the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the gallery? So what we'll do, we'll get a report based on today's, and including council comments, and then we'll look at whether we want to change some of these ideas about disincentives. There were some very good comments made about fire protection and how it affects our homes when we're having trees close by, or even hanging over our neighbor's property. There are issues, and there were very valid comments made. So I would look forward to a report from staff on tonight's meeting and the comments that were made, and for council to give direction accordingly. Councillor Harrison.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to point out a couple of things. Informally, I did talk to staff that they are starting to track how many trees are taken down by the town every year. So for the longest time, we didn't actually track that. I think we have GIS data on the number of trees in town. I actually think every tree was mapped a few years ago. Now, granted, I don't know how often we're updating that because that's a lot of work. And yeah, I thought there were a lot of good points, but I think we should wait for council making points at a later date. But thanks. But just for a couple points when people were mentioning that. Oh, and last thing is also too, I think we're updating this study on the tree canopy this year or next year. It's happening soon. I think it's this year.
I believe it's this year, Mr. Sales.
Thank you, Mayor Westbrook. That is good information for council and the public. So as a part of council's strategic plan last year, there was a budget allocated to update the tree canopy coverage, and the town has secured a contract with a consultant that's going to do that work for us. They're going to be doing it for actually 2 years of orthophotos, one based on the 2000, I believe it's 22, or might be 23. And then we have a contract for them to repeat that same process again in 2 years. So we will have updated orthophotos by then, so we'll be able to track that change over time. the technology and the technique of doing the assessment is different than what was done by Giant Associates in 2018. So we are looking to at least have 2 data points with the same methodology. So we're doing this year and once again in 2 years. So we will have updated information available to the public, likely, certainly this year, likely within 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you. So on behalf of council, I want to thank you for participating tonight. And the first speaker made some very valid comments about how we could make some exemptions for obvious reasons. I think we need to look at those, and some issues about fire protection. We all know about that. So I think this is a very valid exercise for us to have this check-in rather than waiting until the end of the year. I think we wanted to know what kind of feedback we were going to get, and we got some very good feedbacks, and we will act on it as soon as we have a time to do it. But I can promise you on behalf of council that your comments will be taken seriously. Thank you. And with that, I need a motion to waive the Councillor Harrison.
Motion to waive notice for a regular council meeting.
Yes, we have a couple of notices of motions that if we don't act on them tonight, it's to kind of run out of time. So because of the timing, we move into a regular council meeting, a special regular council meeting, where we can make motions that will actually be acted on. They won't be long. I will promise you I won't keep you long. There is one notice of motion from Councillor Skipsey, so we'll start with that.
I'll second his
I thought Councillor Harrison or Councillor Skipsey had their hand up when you raised the question.
Yeah, we were just trying to.
So for the record, Councillor Harrison made the motion, Councillor Skipsey seconding. Thank you. Councillor Skipsey.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so I have a notice of motion. Oh.
Sorry, forgive me, Your Worship. I think we should just vote on the
I think
waiving
it's by
notice.
consent. I think it's by consent. Then we just posted it. Then it's by consent. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so I have put forward a notice of motion with regard to a conference that's going to be taking place here in Qualicum Beach from May 9th to 12th. May 9th to 12th at the Civic Center. And to my knowledge, a subsidy for the Civic Center has not been asked for nor given. And the idea is that the funds that have been requested would be used to provide each delegate with a locally made reusable cotton bag printed with the town of Qualicum Beach and art by a local artist. And in that way, it would be a great way to promote and support our town and the community. And then any bags that would be left over from the event would be returned to the town for our own use. And I think also by making this contribution, the town will be acknowledged as a sponsor of the event in the printed materials. So I would make the motion that is before council.
Seconding? I got 2 people seconding? Okay. Councillor Harrison seconding. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. Thank you. Councillor Skipsey. Sorry, that was Councillor Skipsey. Councillor Vander, Valk, your motion, please.
Thank you.
Maybe perhaps in this case read it out for the benefit of the gallery?
Sure. This is regarding the St. Andrew's Lodge Heritage and Cultural Society. So whereas the St. Andrew's Lodge Heritage and Cultural Society, SALHACS, has been named as one of 12 finalists across Canada to participate in a vote for the Next Great Save $50,000 grant from the National Trust to go towards the restoration of the St. Andrew's Lodge. And whereas the St. Andrew's Lodge is a town-owned building, and whereas the town of Qualicum Beach supports the restoration of the St. Andrew's Lodge building, therefore be it resolved that the town of Qualicum Beach provide the following as soon as possible based on the information SALHACS provides. 1, publication of a brief post and the poster, if possible, on the town's social media sites. 2, information posted as above on the town website. And 3, publication of the information and, if possible, the poster with the QR code in town tidings if there is one scheduled before May 6th, which there is town tidings, I believe, scheduled for May the 1st. And that's the motion. So I would.
I need a seconder. Councillor Skipsey seconding. Discussion. Councillor Harrison.
Just one point which seems a bit counterintuitive. You are allowed to vote every single day, just once per day. So feel free to stuff the ballot.
Any further discussion? Thank you. All right. Are you ready for the question? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried unanimously. Now we can go for adjournment, but before that, I want to thank you for your patience and for participating in this meeting. So a motion to adjourn would be appropriate. Councillor Vander, Councillor Young, all in favor? We are adjourned. Thank you.